Hello, broadcast community, and welcome to the next episode in Bounce Up Broadcast. I am MJ Calloway, and I am here today with my rock star co host.
Jim Kunkel, MJ, thank you so much. You give me such great honor. I really appreciate that rock star tag.
You are a rock star, Jim, and I love working with you. And for our audience, Jim is the mastermind behind all of the back screen stuff. And I am so grateful for him because I sit here and I listen to the music, do a little bopping, and he takes care of everything. I mean, he is definitely a rock star. So I am so thankful, especially as we're going into the month of November. And I know we will cover gratitude and thankfulness, but I am so grateful to have you as my co-host every week here on Thursday at noon.
Well, I can say that I'm very grateful to have you as a friend, and also too, you provide me a lot of guidance. So I appreciate everything you do for me as well.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I'm excited about this topic. So we're
Yeah.
talking about goals today, and does resilience really play into reaching goals? And Jim, this topic can go in so many different directions. So the first thing that I was thinking of is because someone reached out to me this past week, and a manager, sales manager, and we're both, we both have been in business development for most of our career. And we hear this often within the sales industry, within that position, is what do you do? It's coming up at the end of the month, the end of the year, and companies are trying to hit goals, and salespeople are trying to hit goals, and departments are trying to hit their goals. So, what is it that some people can hit their goals, some people are motivated, and others are not? What's your take just on the topic of goals to begin with?
Well, a lot of times I think everyone thinks, especially when you're in business development, you're in sales, and even some of the other functions as well in a business, you think, okay, I got to come up with goals. So let me try to make some things up that will make my boss and my company be happy. And I'll make them in such a way that I know that they're easily achievable, but I'll add a little bit of stretch to them. But really, what you want to do is you want to make sure you're setting realistic goals. And what I always like to do is find out exactly where does my organization, where do we need to be at revenue wise? And based on that number and based on where the mission or whatever the position that your company wants to be in, you basically back roll everything into goals so that everything kind of works together and it feeds into having a profitable year. Or in some cases, if you have a challenging year, now you have an opportunity to go back and look at results versus goals and figure out what went wrong and what changes need to be made moving forward.
Great point there. And sometimes it's just small little tweaks. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Oh, definitely. The nice thing about having goals laid out that are, again, they're smart, they're realistic, time based, all that, they call them SMART goals,
Right.
is that you will be able to, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on a semi-annually basis, and then at the end of the year, be able to, like I say, kind of benchmark those goals against the results and figure out exactly where some improvement needs to be made. And maybe there's some areas where you blew through your goal, and it could be a situation maybe that you didn't anticipate, you didn't expect. So it can be something that's unexpected. It could be a short-term thing where because of a certain type of economic situation or condition in a market. But also too, you want to make sure that you're looking at the successes and the failures and the shortfalls to be able to come up with a better game plan when it comes to setting more realistic goals.
Definitely. And then it is a mixture of what is a success and what is a failure, or maybe a lesson learned. I like to use lesson learned instead of the word failure. So this is where I can either make changes. Well, we would have to make changes if it isn't working.
Not to interrupt you here, but sometimes, success can be, it's defined in different ways. A lot of times we will put it into terms of revenue, profitability. It could be tied to mission, market penetration, things like that, branding. So there could be a certain situation where your company if it's a newer company and you're fighting against competition, maybe you're not going to turn a profit for a couple of years. But if you can increase your branding awareness, market penetration, and also you're winning the mind share that's out there of the clients and prospects and customers, that can be determined to be a success as well, because it builds for the future. And then those goals being set moving forward tend to be focused on revenue generation and profitability.
And definitely and adding that building relationship and getting out into the public, as you talked about marketing. So all those pieces, because without the public knowing, without the marketing, without building relationships, we're never going to get those clients that we need. So there's all of that foundation work that you're talking about that has to be done in the beginning. And sometimes not even in the beginning. Sometimes and I will speak from some of the companies I have worked with in the past, you get comfortable. And then you don't make the effort. So then it's going back. Let's go back to those basics. Get back to those basic skills, get back to the basics and building a relationship and making those phone calls and meeting people and sending them an article that might lead them to another direction or something they're interested in. So it's building that foundation sometimes that we have let go because we get comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And I work for, in the past employment, I worked for a company, and we would do what we call goal celebrations. We would look at goals where we were, and we would have kind of, the best way to describe it would be more like having a rally where we would come in and we would talk about where we are in comparison to goals. We would talk about things that we need to change to improve. Maybe there's some training that they were going to be bringing in on board. And then when we had goal success, we would celebrate them instead of waiting to the end of the year. If things look like they were trending in the right direction, let's celebrate that. And it really helped for that company, it helped involve the employees into staying focused on the goals, that it's not just about making my boss more money or a bonus or the owners of the company more money. I'm part of the process too. Mm-hmm. And it really made them, invested into the success of the company and achieving goals. Or if they weren't, again, not depressing them, but also making them feel comfortable saying, listen, hey, we're going to stumble a little, we're going to fall sometimes, but we have to figure out how to pick ourselves up and move forward. And I really liked that involvement at that particular company, because it was something that wasn't just done at the end of the year and going into the beginning of a new year. It was something that was done throughout the whole year when it came to goals.
I love that idea and that celebration, that rally, because it does keep people motivated and it keeps people invested and engaged. And let's face it, today we need to have people more engaged in our companies than ever before. And I wanted to bring up a statistic that I came across, that Americans are at the lowest and the way of what they're happiest for the first time, the lowest in 50 years. So when we think about that, and we think about something similar to creating that celebration, that rally, it's a way to make people happy, to engage them, and to keep them motivated and inspired. So I love that idea.
Yeah, and I think it also does help with the generational, boomers are now, a lot of boomers have retired. They're in the process of retiring and moving on. Some are stepping down from leadership positions and taking a different role within organizations and companies. So you have a much younger generation coming in. And if you can have some of these things that will really help them engaged and part of the process, because when you really look at the younger generation, they want to be involved in even to the point of business decisions. And so if you were to do these goal rallies and things like that, these activities really help them feel that they are engaged, that they are involved in that process in the company, versus just being, I'm an employee and all I do is my job and go home every day. That's not what they're looking for. I know I have 2 young adult daughters. I do know that they really like to take an active role when it comes to what they're doing in their jobs and their performance as well. So it's a great way to engage, I think, the younger generation with goals, but also with the operation of a company without making them obviously be the decision makers. They feel they're involved. And that's a good thing.
Definitely a good thing. I did a survey a few years ago with 100, at that time, it was 100 professionals under the age of 35. And the one thing that kept coming up over and over, and it was what you liked in the workplace, what you didn't. And when we talked about events or training, they said, don't make it feel like work. So
Yeah.
if you're having something after work, or if you're having some type of a training, don't make it feel the same as it does every other day.
hmm That's a good point.
I'm just going to mention this one little thing. So I worked with a billion-dollar manufacturing company it's actually out of Germany, but they have several locations locally and in the US. And during my trainings, and I do cohorts of 6, and during my trainings, I'll do fun things like whenever people are engaging, I'll find out all their favorite snacks ahead of time. And then I'll throw, like, somebody liked Kind bars. When he made an answer that was appropriate, I threw him, a Kind bar. And at the end of it was a 5-week series every Friday morning. And they called him Wicked Smart, the one guy. So he was in the research department, had a very high IQ. When I asked him, I said, what was your biggest takeaway? And he says, MJ, you didn't stand there and read a book. It wasn't prepackaged. You knew what you were talking about, and you had us engaged. So going back to what you're saying about the generations coming up, they want to be more engaged instead of, like this person, I don't want to say his name, he didn't want me standing in front of the room reading a book.
Yeah, that does happen, unfortunately, much too often. Now, I have to say, if you're throwing candy at me, my doctor, who I talked with yesterday, is probably going to have a problem with that.
So that's where the Kind bars came in too. So I had a mixture
Oh, there you go.
of candy bars and protein bars so that I could fit. That's why I always asked ahead of time a couple of questions just to get to know people. But okay, I got us off track here a little bit on goals. So what do you think we need in goals? What do you think? So let's go back in a goal, and it doesn't have to be a professional goal. It doesn't have to be a work goal. It can be a personal goal. But when it comes to a goal, what do you think, Jim, we need to make that happen?
Well, I think you have to know exactly what to you would be, what does success look like? What's the end game? So if you have the end part of it and understanding, that helps you kind of build those goals into reaching or achieving whatever that magnitude or whatever you're looking to, that height that you're looking to hit. So you want to make sure you have that. And then also too, when it looks like goal planning, I like writing them down, because I think when you write them down and then you go through and you benchmark them, because the other thing too is, I've got a lot of professional friends, both in the industry I'm in, other industries. I will take goals and benchmark them off of them, or ask them to actually take a look at this and tell me what you think about it. Because what I want to make sure is whatever goals I do give to my boss, that they do make a lot of sense. They are reasonable. And then the other thing too is that they're going to be very attainable. So you never want to set anything unrealistic, because it's only going to get you in trouble.
Those BHAG goals, those ones that are just too big to actually hit. So they can be a stretch goal. You can have a realistic goal and then a stretch goal. You had mentioned that earlier.
But you don't want any easy hitters, because then that could show to your boss and to your company that you're really not serious about setting goals.
Well, and the other thing too, we don't grow.
That's a
If
good
we're
point.
not making those goals where we are actually learning or we're stretching, we don't grow. So we need to make those, as you said, not easy targets. So make it something that is attainable. However, it is going to make you reach beyond where you are currently.
That's a great point.
I'd like to add one more thing. We hear often, and you probably have heard this because I know you are very well read. So the why, Simon Sinek always talks about the why. So the why behind it, and I'd like to dig down a little bit deeper. I believe there does need to be a why. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jim. Think there needs to be?
There has to be. And the other thing too, there could be some others that depending on what your role and responsibility is in the industry. And it might be more than just a why, but the why is super critical.
Yes. And I like to find out what is the emotional meaning behind that why. Because when we dig down to that emotional meaning, we're pulling in something that makes our heart race. When there's an emotion behind it, when there's a meaning behind it, it actually makes that goal stronger to obtain.
That's a good point.
So one of the examples that I like to use, actually, I'm going to use something different this time. So Jim, I've talked to you a couple of times about, I'm not going to say who he is. So Josh Rolnick, who is on LinkedIn here, recently he did a fundraiser for Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation. And it's still, and we're in October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And his goal was to run 52.4 miles, a double marathon. And he had some emotional meanings behind it. One, his mother had been through breast cancer twice. He has a daughter. So that was a big one because it has been a generational thing in the family. And then two, this Young Women's Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation is a foundation that has helped so many people within our community. Jim, we live in the same community. So he wanted to raise, so that was his why. And he wanted to raise 10,000. Actually, it started at $5,000. And then when he hit that, he bumped it to 10,000. And then he ended up over $12,000. Now that's a personal goal, but it's so relatable to business because how he set it up to actually achieve it, and he did it in 9 hours and 38 minutes, which still blows my mind. Jim, can you imagine running for 9 hours?
No, I couldn't even think of walking that for 9 hours.
I agree. So one of the things, the first one was he trained. So when we think about our own goals and we think about, so he trained, he developed a skill. So when we're talking about goals, we need to think about how are we training? What skills are we bringing in to make that goal happen? Because Jim, think about it. You couldn't hit your numbers without having the skills you already have.
No, yeah, you have to build up to that point, and sometimes it can take a lot of trial and error and time and everything like that. And the thing with it is we're talking, and I realize I'm talking more business related goals, but there are personal goals that are super critical as well. And the same type of planning and the same type of, let's say, skill training that you need for him to be able to run a double marathon, that's sometimes a superhuman feat to be able to do that. And so it takes a lot of effort and a lot of commitment too.
And the same in our professional lives, to hit those goals, sometimes it takes a lot of time, effort, and commitment to do it. So the other thing that I thought about too, whenever, after the fact, and I thought, what all did it take for him to do that? He enlisted, so he ran 10 laps around a 5-mile track. It was actually around a lake. And he enlisted other runners, people that ran marathons, so that they could support him around each lap. And then he chose someone very specific to help him for the very last lap. And think about the people that we need to support us in our businesses and in our personal life. The same way that he enlisted runners to help him achieve that, who can we bring in to help us achieve our goals?
Yeah, kind of like there's no I in team. You really have to think for your goals to be successful. You're going to need to have some support, and you also, in some cases, might need to have someone cheering you on.
Definitely. And then also a mentor. Sometimes we need a mentor in there that can help us. They've been there. They can help us see what we might not. You had mentioned earlier that you do have people look at your goals, both in the industry and outside of the industry. So you're tapping into what one of the contributors to my book, he calls mountain guides, somebody that has already been there. They know the scars, they've been through the bushes. So you're bringing them in the same way that Josh did there. So it does help you reach those goals. So the other one was mindset. So prior to him running this double marathon, the founder of the foundation, her name's Jen, she had said to him, Josh, you are ready. You've raised so much money already. We're so thrilled that you did this for us. If you can't complete it, it's okay, whatever you can do. And he came back at her with, I'm doing it. That mindset, I'm doing it. And sometimes, Jim, I wonder, when I look at when I don't complete a goal and I go back and I think, what kind of mindset did I have going into this?
Yeah, that's really, you have to be committed to it. Also, too, you have to be mindful that, again, you could stumble, you could fall, but you have to keep moving forward. You're growing or you're not, so you got to keep moving forward. So that's a great story related to perseverance and to your point, what you cover, bouncing up. If he were to stumble, he needs to bounce back up and keep going.
Yes. So that goes back to resilience. And because I'm doing a program around resilience, and the definition for resilience, according to to a Harvard psychologist, is adapting. Adapting. So I'm not always okay with that word, adapting, because I would prefer to use the word bounce up, because with bounce up, we're bouncing higher and stronger. We're going beyond adapting. We're doing more than adapting. So resilience does play, I think, because you had mentioned, when you stumble, you keep going. And that's where resilience plays into it. It's you keep going, as you had mentioned. But bounce up's just a little bit stronger.
Definitely. Very good.
So there's one piece of information that I came as I was doing some research that I'd love to share. So it is from Vanderbilt Research. And this is a study. They did 2 groups to find out what caused people to actually be a go-getter, or I didn't really like their term. They use slacker, but I'm going to say struggler, somebody who struggled. So they found that both groups had dopamine, which we know that's one of those happy chemicals. However, the ones who were go-getters, they had more dopamine in the reward part of their brain. And the ones who struggled had more dopamine in the risk part of their brain. Isn't that fascinating?
It is very fascinating.
So it could be you just have dopamine in the wrong part of the brain. So Jim, taking it one step further with it, I thought, okay, so so I did a little research, how can you increase that dopamine? And what do you, just off the top of your head, because you haven't researched, think back to one of our favorite people who talks about one area that has to do with the mind. I know I'm not giving you a big clue. So.
I think you want to focus on, like, for example, for me, I would focus on my family.
Oh, good one. That is a good one, because you're talking about reward.
Yeah, because everything I do, ultimately, it benefits my family, and so for me, that's super critical for me is the health, safety, and success of my family. So that always is in the back of my mind, and it helps be a strong motivator for me.
Definitely. And that would increase dopamine there. So another way to do it, and I was thinking about Raquel. Raquel's one of our friends.
Oh,
Raquel
yeah.
talks about mindfulness, meditation.
Meditation. Yeah.
Meditation can increase the dopamine in the reward part of the brain, actually in three different parts of the brain. So think about a 10-minute meditation can change our day. I just think that's so fascinating.
What about when it comes to, let's say, creating, where you're trying to create a habit? It takes, I don't know if it's 21 days to create a habit or whatever the number of days. Are you able to kind of not rewire your brain, but to kind of refocus your brain so that you could take it from being the risk side to being the reward side when it comes to the dopamine hit? Can that be done?
Definitely. So according to this research, so adding sleep, changing some of our lifestyle habits too. Sleep was one that was very important. Adding meditation. The other one also is adding music. So if
Mm,
we think about it and we want to add a new habit or a new routine, if we add these in, and then we talked about anchors, I don't know, was it last week, the week before?
yeah.
So if we do something, say in the morning, we get up and we brush our teeth and we have music playing, and then use that as an anchor to make our new habit, we've increased, if we did the meditation and then we added the music, we've already increased our dopamine that can go to that reward part of the brain, which can help and then use the anchor so it can help us develop those new routines and those new habits, which can help us hit those goals.
Wow, that's super important to know that, and it's never a done deal for anyone. You can change, and there's ways to change. You just have to be committed, focused on being the change and making the change happen.
And think about it, if we can add something as simple as meditation or listening to music that helps us to hit our goals, I mean, like, why not?
That's a good point.
So the as we're coming to a close here, we always do a bounce up moment. So what is one tip, Jim, that you would offer people in a way of, okay, think about this whenever you're ready to create your goals?
I think what I would recommend is to, you know, look at exactly what is that end of that goal. What is success going to look like? What are you looking to achieve? And you need to understand exactly what's the end game, the end result that you're looking to achieve. And then your goal should obviously be a little bit more easily to focus, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to create. So you have to really kind of push yourself too, because you want to have those stretch goals and things like that to make even at the end make it even better.
Good. That's a great framework there. So I will add to it, look at your mindset going in. What mindset do you have on a scale of 1 to 10? Where's your determination? Where's your mindset? Where's your commitment? And then dig down to the emotional meaning. Jim talked about his family is a big part of his, making him motivated. So what is the emotional meaning behind whatever your goal is? So I would add those to your framework.
Very good. MJ, what an awesome broadcast this today.
Definitely. I love talking about goals. I love hitting
Yeah.
goals even more.
Yeah, it's important. It's important both in your personal life and also your business life as well.
Definitely. All right, that wraps up this episode of Bounce Up Broadcast. We will look forward to seeing you next Thursday again at noon. I am MJ Calloway and my rockstar co host,
Jim Kunkel.
and we wish you a bounce up day.
See you later.